heart. It's just wonderful. So I'd like to invite our beautiful, wonderful senior minister, Reverend Cathy, up. Thank you.
I swear, I think the musicians have a secret contest going on. Who can make Cathy cry the most? I love that song. It's a beautiful song. And today is for the fathers. It's for the grandfathers and the uncles and the brothers and all the sons, for the most important man in anyone's life, the man who contributed to giving you life. So here's to you. Here's to the dads who always play endless games of fish with their kids and let them win. And to those who always played to win every time, thinking that their children would go stronger through defeat. This is for the fathers who worked in fields and in factories, who taught in classrooms or sat in offices 8 long hours a day. Here's to those who performed life-saving surgery and to those who drove their truck through long days and nights. Here's to those who loved every minute of their labor and to those who only worked so that their families could survive. To the sleepless dads who have waited in silent fear that their babies wouldn't make it through the night or their teenagers survive their first time driving alone. Those who lost children and those who found them along the way. Here's to tears not shed and hugs not given for fear of appearing weak. Here's to dads who build with a hammer and saw, and to those who wouldn't know how. The fathers who are afraid of spiders and yet can slay the great dragon of fear within their own little ones. The fathers who tried and those who didn't. The fathers who gave us life and walked away, and those who stayed long past the life of their marriage to give something to their children. The fathers who hurt because their children have been kept from them, and those who have been both father and mother. Stay-at-home dads and stay-away dads, the one we wanted but never knew. The helpless, hurting father and the brave, strong one. And for all the ways of fatherhood, here's to you. Happy Father's Day. You know, I wish I knew the author of this piece, because whoever wrote it captured the essence of fatherhood in every single infinite variety. Mark Twain had this to say about fathers. He said, "When I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant that I could hardly stand to have the old man around. But when I got to be 21, I was astonished at how much he had learned in 7 years." And Dr. Dennis Merritt Jones kind of fleshed out this idea in a piece he wrote a while back called "Abba Knows Best." He said, 4 years of age, my daddy can do anything. 7 years of age, my dad knows a lot, a whole lot. 14 years of age, oh, Dad, he's kind of clueless. 21 years of age, oh my God, that man is so out of date. 35 years of age, before we decide, let's check in with Dad and see how he feels. 50 years of age, what would Dad have thought about that? And 65 years of age, I only wish I could talk it over with my dad. Australian poem Pam Brown said, "Dads are most ordinary men turned by love into heroes and adventurers and storytellers and singers of songs." And St. Catherine of Siena reminisced of the love she felt from her father. She said, "I remember once walking out in the winter to greet my father as he returned from work. I waited by a street corner in a world of magic, smells of good food, the street lamps, the smoke coming from chimneys, the candles burning in the windows, the snow. We ran into each other's arms, and he lifted me as he so often had, twirled me through the air, his hands beneath my arms. That is what a father does, lifts us and lets us fly." Now, I'm thinking we should add a caveat here and say this is what fathers should do: lift us and let us fly. Because the truth is that some of us may not have had these idyllic experiences with our biological dads. I know there's a lot of baby boomers out here in this audience and listening from home today who well remember the stereotypical father of the 1950s as portrayed by the handsome, smiling dads on our black and white TVs. You know, those dads like Father Knows Best, The Donna Reed Show, Make Room for Daddy, those ever-patient, hardworking men who never raised their voices, who always dispensed deep wisdom, and who loved and provided for their families without fail. These are the dads we all wanted. And yeah, some of us were blessed to have been gifted with a reasonable facsimile of a 50s dad, and were raised by a father who was kind and loving and available when we needed him. And some of us had a radically different experience. But I know that we all share the same desire to receive the love and guidance and support, protection and acceptance personified in the 50s dad. And the good news is, if we couldn't get it from our biological dads, we can get it through the establishment of an intimate relationship with the God of unconditional love, the creative force who was referred to by the Rabbi Jesus as Abba, which is an Aramaic term, which is the language that Jesus spoke. It's Aramaic, and it's a term of endearment that means father or daddy. Dr. Dennis Merritt Jones reminds us that we can choose to spiritualize the entire concept of father, just like Jesus did, by getting in touch with the presence of God within ourselves as a universal principle, not a personality, but an intelligence that knows only how to love and support its progeny in doing and being what we choose to do and be. In other words, to lift us and let us fly. And what would Father's Day be without a bit of humor? And in this case, a very little bit of humor. So one night, a farmer's outhouse was tipped over. And in the morning, the father approached his son and said, "Son, did you just happen to knock that outhouse over last night?" The son was like, "Me? Oh, no, I didn't do that, Dad." And the father patiently said, "Son, let me tell you a story. When George Washington was a little boy, he chopped down his father's favorite cherry tree. And when his father asked him whether or not he was the one that chopped it down, he responded, 'Father, I cannot tell a lie. I chopped down the cherry tree.'" George Washington's father was so proud of his son, he didn't punish him for cutting down the tree. In fact, he rewarded him for being honest. Now, I'm going to ask you again. Son, did you knock over the outhouse last night? The father's son was so moved by his father's story, he said, "Okay, Dad, I cannot tell a lie. It was me. I did it. I knocked over the outhouse." The farmer then proceeded to give his son a hard spanking. When it was over, the son gasped out between cries, "But Dad, George Washington's father rewarded him for telling the truth. He didn't give him a spanking." His father replied, "George Washington's father was not in the cherry tree at the time." So, Father's Day began with an idea in the mind of a young woman whose name was Sonora Smart Dodd of Spokane, Washington, who was sitting in church one day listening to a Mother's Day service and wondered why fathers weren't honored in the same way with a special day like mothers were. And she took that idea and she set that idea in motion. And today we celebrate those men who gave us the gift of life, But hopefully we're also celebrating any males who have come into our lives and have mentored us and have provided us with the masculine energy of strong support and protection and guidance and wisdom and most of all, love. And fittingly, as Casey said, our topic today, in keeping with June's theme of the soul's call, is what's evolution without love? And love's not an easy thing to define. Is it a feeling? Is it an action? It can be slippery, it can be intangible, but we know it's both. Love encompasses both feelings and actions. Dr. Holmes defines love as the self-givingness of universal spirit through its desire to express itself in terms of creation. Love is the impulse, and law is the way of creation. Sonora Dodd had the loving impulse to honor her dad along with her mother. And out of that impulse, the first Father's Day was created and celebrated in 1910 in the state of Washington. And then it evolved over 62 years to where we are now, actually becoming official and acknowledged by the feds in 1972. And that's the way evolution works. It works slowly, but love is the impulse and law is the way of creation. Evolution can't occur without the impulse of love driving it and the law of creation moving it forward. In the words of the Reverend Scott Aubrey, creation is a sacred encounter. A person must have an idea before she can bring it into manifestation. When we build a house, we build it first in mind. We have an idea of a house, complete the plan in mind, and then we work it out in manifestation. There's always an idea in back of what we create. The idea in back of music is harmony. The idea back of a flower is beauty. The first step in creation is the awakening to spiritual consciousness, the dawning of light in mind, the perception of truth through the quickening of spirit. This is the creative, evolutionary process of God. Underlying all creation is the divine idea of life and love. Teilhard de Chardin describes love as the cosmic allurement of everything towards everything. I think that's a great definition. He also said love is a sacred reserve of energy. It is like the blood of spiritual evolution. So let's talk a little bit about spiritual evolution. Casey mentioned this in her creative thought, but I'm talking about the day that's colloquially known as Juneteenth, June 19th, which was widely celebrated by African Americans yesterday as their true Independence Day. It's also known as Freedom Day. Some people call it Emancipation Day. This holiday is rooted in the state of Texas and commemorates June 19, 1865, which is the day when enslaved African Americans living in Texas were finally informed of their freedom, 2.5 years after President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863. Mr. Kenneth Timmons is a resident of a small Texas town, and he was quoted this year as saying, "Even though the United States celebrates July 4th as their Independence Day, we were still considered slaves. So for us, this is the day of our ancestors were finally released from servitude and slavery. This is our Independence Day." And I'm guessing that up until this year, many Americans were not even aware of Juneteenth, the holiday that is so sacred to so many. But over the past few weeks, there's been a surge of attention on the holiday, encouraged by the awakening of Americans. And granted, this has been a raw and painful awakening, triggered by the video footage of one man imprisoned under the knee of a police officer, dying on camera as he said repeatedly, "I can't breathe." This is an image that is now seared into the heart of our nation. a powerful image that has led to the upsurge of Americans who are finally opening their eyes and acknowledging, and are not only acknowledging, but now actively working toward ending the racially motivated violence and systemic racism that has plagued our nation. So in 1980, Texas became the first state to make Juneteenth a state holiday. And on June 17, 2021, Hawaii hobbled in and became the 49th state to officially recognize Juneteenth. Yeah, just hours, that's right, just hours before President Joe Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act into law. It is the first new federal holiday to be enacted since Martin Luther King Day was signed into law in 1986. President Barack Obama said this about Juneteenth: Juneteenth has never been a celebration of victory or an acceptance of the way things are. It is a celebration of progress. It is an affirmation that despite the most painful part of our history, change is possible. What's evolution without love? Nothing would move forward, nothing would move forward without the impulse of love opening hearts and moving people to righteous action. The Hawaiian word that fits here is pono, choosing to live life in a conscious and righteous way that promotes equality and oneness for all humanity. And as Dr. Holmes would say, love points the way and law makes it possible. You know, our population on planet Earth is over 7 billion people. How many of those people do you think awaken each morning with the intent to do harm? Even if the number you come up with in your head is sizable, let's just say 1 billion people wake up every morning with the intention to do harm. That still leaves over 6 billion people who wake up every morning with the intention to be kind. We see it over and over. When harm rises and threatens, love surrounds it and embraces it and moves us forward in consciousness towards transformation. It cannot be otherwise because it's the way of evolution. And for those people who do awaken with the intention to do harm, I'm always remembering the words of Sikh activist Valerie Carr, and these words have become kind of a mantra to me these days. She says, "There are no monsters, only wounded people acting like monsters." Our wounds are being brought to the surface, and when our wounds are brought to the surface and they are acknowledged and seen and cleaned and dressed, they heal. And it's in the healing that births evolution. Dominican sister Rebecca Sheenus said this: "In our time, the love light is so strong that even the woundedness of hate, violence, prejudice, and all intent of doing harm is being allured by this cosmic love, thus rising to be healed. Yet when harm is coming out of the shadows so boldly to speak its hate, it is only because it's finding the courage to speak its hurt. And we are tenderly called to lift up this hurt with a cosmic love vision, a vision that we believe any atrocity can be held in a field of absolute love. The universe spirals upward because it is powered by love. And as cliched as it might sound, love is truly the answer to every question, and there is no greater power on earth. It's the small gifts of grace that we choose to give each day that evolve us in consciousness and move us forward. And with all this love flowing around planet Earth, and the deep knowing that we all reside in the same magnificent space of supreme oneness, we will continue to evolve, pushed by pain and pulled by vision, until we finally see that world that we envision, that world that works for everyone. Today is the beginning of summer solstice, the day that receives more daylight than any other day of the year. This is in the northern hemisphere. This is the time to remember and to reconnect with the light that indwells us and is us. Canadian poet and author Margaret Atwood wrote this: "This is the solstice, the still point of the sun, its cusp and midnight, the year's threshold and unlocking, where the past lets go of and becomes the future, the place of caught breath." I love that. The place of caught breath. It is a beautiful and sacred time then to reflect on what wants to be planted, what wants to be strengthened, what wants to be restored, and what wants to be released within us. Gabriel Herstick is a Wiccan practitioner who said that many spiritual practitioners who abide by nature and the seasons hold this as a sacred time to celebrate the life-giving star known as the sun. This has historically been a day when solar power is honored and exalted, when we get to connect to the revitalizing and re-energizing spirit of the sun. The energy is intoxicating and vibrant, warm and fertile. The sun represents the light of all life and consciousness. Seeds are planted in the earth, and seeds are planted in our souls. It's a time of renewal and abundance, a time of love and expansion. As the summer sun unfolds the leaves on the trees, so do our souls open up to receive the light of Source, to illuminate that which is already within us. It's a great time to pollinate our spiritual consciousness with loving intentions and with gratitude for the abundance that we experience in nature every day. Whew, just look outside right now. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So today I'd like to close with a short and sweet prayer honoring the summer solstice. As the sun spirals its longest dance, cleanse us. As nature shows bounty and fertility, bless us. Let all things live with loving intent and to fulfill their truest destiny. And so it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Cathy. As always, she brings us magic. Thank you. So now we're called to that time of giving and receiving. And we know there are many ways that we can do that. And yes, we are so extremely grateful for all of the contributions. We are here because of you and because of them. So thank you. So please, if you would right now, maybe place your hand on your heart and just hold yourself close and repeat after me. Divine love in and through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, all that I receive, and all that I am. And so it is. Yes, we welcome back our musicians.